it's my great honor to be speaking to you today. I never in my wildest dreams thought I would be addressing all of you here at the Gurdwara Sahib. And I'm here to talk to you. My name is Dr. Nicole, Ranganath, as Dr. Kong said, and I'm a courageous woman for speaking after Dr. Kong. So, but I'm here to talk to you about a project that's extremely important. And I want to start with a little personal story, which is 2018, from my point of view, has been a year of so much negativity, so much hate, so much intolerance. And the most important message I want to give to you today is that myself and UC Davis is partnering with the Sikh community on creative educational projects that will help you for many years to come. So I'm going to talk to you about one specific project and about the history of women. And I'm going to answer your question, which is why is a Gori with a South Indian name talking to us about Sikh history? Good question. And I can say without a doubt, even if my mother-in-law were here, I would say this, which is that Punjabis have the richest, deepest, most fascinating history in the United States of all South Asian Americans. They've been here the longest. As you know, Punjabis have been here since at least the 1890s in California. But in the scholarship, in the American society, in the Sikh community, the lives of women, the history of women, the contributions have really been invisible. So it's long overdue that we create a project in which we give them public recognition. So this is a very positive project. It's a pro-Sikhi project. And it's really following the words of all of the speakers here today and Guru Nanak Dev Ji's teachings, which is, it's not just about women's history, there's a deeper purpose. And the fact is, this is a project that celebrates humanity and that all people are equally deserving of having their voices and their history preserved and shared. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit specifically about the project. I want to say one more thing personally, which is I have the highest respect and the greatest affection for the Sikh community. In my 3 years working with the Sikh community, I've become an infinitely better human being. Before I met the Sikhs, I never gave to charity. I never engaged in seva. I was involved in my own professional advancement and my family. But I learned from the Sikh being fully engaged in society. And I really believe that Sikhs are the best Americans with it. So with those words, I want to start and talk to you a little bit about this historic project. So 2 years ago, we formed a working committee, UC Davis. I received a grant from the California Humanities, and I worked with some very important community leaders, both in the American society, and then also 3 really important women in the community. Raji Chamber, Devinder Dale, and Sharon Singh. And what we did was we wanted to have a community-wide project. Not just a project that celebrated the famous and the few, but really to get at the contributions of women of all different backgrounds in the Sikh community. Excuse me. So, Priti Gurwal also already talked about the famous women in Sikh history. And so what we wanted to do in this project was to emphasize the importance of women in your community. Not just positive role models in Sikhis, such as Mai Bhago, Maharani Jinkaur. Probably a few of you have heard of Gulab Kaur, who fought, so many women also fought for the Gadar movement. Also Sophia, Princess Dalip Singh, who fought for the right of all women in England to get the right to vote. But in addition to these famous women, we wanted to document the history of the important Sikhs and So you're looking at the picture here, the woman in the middle, her name was Nicole, and she's the first recorded Sikh woman to have entered the United States, all the way back in 1910. Her daughter, Gurta Gurgaddi Divas, she was the first Sikh woman born in the United States in 1915. She went on to become a very important leader in a lot of progressive movements. And then there's like a local hero, which is Nicole, which I'm sure there are family members here today. And Nicole's contributions are incredibly important and are going to be documented in the first documentary of women in the Punjabi community. When she arrived in Yuba City in the 1920s, there were no other Punjabi women. There were hardly anyone who spoke Punjabi. It was extremely lonely. And yet, there wasn't a Gurdwara here. And yet she did so much to maintain Sikhi and to be a leader in the community decades before other Punjabis arrived. So what we did is, in December of last year, we interviewed 24 diverse women. Within 6 days, we worked about 18 hours a day, all the way from Yuba City down to Monterey. We interviewed some famous women like Harmeet Dillon, Navkiran Kalra, Pushpinder Kaur, people who have contributed a huge amount to the Sikh community. But we also interviewed the Bibian, hopefully some of whom are here today, who have unique experiences, who lived in Yuba City in the 1950s and 60s, and when few Punjabis were here, and who played a critical role in making the peach farming industry successful and in maintaining the community here. We also interviewed partition survivors such as Tarn Kong. You can move it forward, yeah. Okay. And then we interviewed, we interviewed a whole range of women across Northern California, all the way from age 20 to the 1980s. But if we hadn't interviewed women at that time, many of whom their experiences would have been lost to history forever. Continue. So we documented what it was like for Punjabi women. We had them share their own stories. What it was like growing up in Punjab, living through partition. And then many of whom had heard all these wonderful things about coming to America. And when they arrived, this is what life was like. And they lived in so-called Hindu labor camps under pretty primitive conditions. It was a very difficult transition. This is Samkor Guriwal, and her family was one of the families who had tremendous faith here, who helped increase the presence of the Guru here in Yuba City. We also told the stories of there were wives that were left behind in Punjab after the men came here for decades. One woman in particular, Bani Rai, had been left behind in Punjab for 62 years, raising her boys by herself, living a very difficult life. And this is what she looked like when she finally arrived in Yuba City to join her husband, Chanchol Rai. She was nearly 90 years old, and she passed away within a year of coming here. So, these stories are incredibly difficult, humbling, because we owe them this honor of remembering their. Another person I really want to recognize is Swarn Kaur. She was a brilliant woman. She became Amritdhari at the age of 12 in Punjab. And she was the first Sikh woman who could recite the Gurta Sahib who came to Yuba City. And so she made these prayer groups before there was a Gurdwara here, And she would explain the important terms in Sikhi in a way that common people could understand. So she played a really key role in increasing Sikhi and deepening people's faith at a time when it was extremely difficult to do so. Women also contributed a huge amount to this Gurdwara and to Nagar Kirtan. So here's a picture of Nicole in her pickup truck. And women were here participating in Nagar Kirtan from the beginning. Here's a picture of the 5 blessed ones. Women also marched along with men in the parade. And also, of course, you all know that women have committed thousands of hours of seva in the Gurdwara Sahib. Here, they also, at a time when there weren't wedding services, women in the community cooked and provided the cooking for all of the Punjabi weddings. So I also wanted to, I think it's lesser known that at the time that Punjabi women arrived in Yuba city, there weren't many Punjabis here. Punjabis had their right to own land was just restored. So women's labor was absolutely critical to turning the Peach family business around. So here's a picture of Adjunct who contributed a great deal to her family's business. Hear more from the Joel family. And this is from the Tumber family. Surjeet Tumber also contributed a great amount to her family's business. I also wanted to recognize the trailblazers in the community. So far ahead of the years of the young people who are so successful in every profession, there were women like Savitri Randhawa. She immigrated to the United States in 1961 as an unmarried woman to pursue her education. Her husband became extremely famous agricultural scientist. He discovered the principle of micronutrients in soil at UC Davis. But she herself, she was admitted into a PhD program at Berkeley in the 1960s. She raised her children in Davis, and then she went back to India, and she became a professor at a time when it was difficult for women to become professors anywhere in the world. I also interviewed Hamid is one of the most visible, highest-ranking American politicians who publicly identifies as Sikh. So we interviewed her and her perspectives, and of course, she's the first person to recite Ardas in Punjabi at a major American political event at the 2016 Republican Convention. And then probably the most moving interview of all was with Nicole. And many of you know of Nicole due to her father's sacrifices during the 1980s and 90s supporting human rights in Punjab, in which he gave the ultimate sacrifice of his life. But it's important to understand the sacrifice from the family's perspective. So she was just 10 years old when she lost her father. Not only that, but her family has a really important history with the Ghadar movement. And her great-grandfather was on the Komagata Maru ship in 1914 and made huge sacrifices for India's freedom. So in that one family, you can see the whole trajectory of Sikh history, throughout the 20th century. We also interviewed women talking about their struggles, their achievements, including Gina Kaur Sidhu. She's one of the highest-ranking Sikh women in the U.S. military. She's a petty officer in the U.S. Navy. She also has a harrowing story of her father was tortured in the 1980s in Punjab. They came to the United States basically for their lives. And it was their experiences in Punjab that led her to make the ultimate sacrifice of enlisting in the U.S. military because she was so grateful to this country. So in closing, I want to thank all of our partners, particularly the Gurdwara Sahib, so many different community partners who are present today for making this project possible. And I want to invite three special people up on stage with me. Sharon Singh, who's from the Pariwal family. Devinder Dale, from the Pepper family. And Raji Tumber, of course, from the Tumber family. So all three of these women were absolutely instrumental in making this project happen. And the most important thing to learn from today, the takeaway message is, this is not about me. This is about honoring the mothers, the Bibian, who made life here possible for all of us, and to inspire other people to tell their stories. Because I think it's important to focus on the 5Ks and having the American public understand why wearing a turban is important. But I also think we're at this juncture in our life in the United States where we need to move to a deeper place. We need Americans to understand what are the inner values that Sikhs stand for, and they, in terms of love, in terms of truth, in terms of justice. I believe that storytelling is the most powerful way that we're going to move forward in a healthy way and to change American society and have Americans understand how incredible your community is. And so I hope in the future this is just a start. We have the documentary that's airing at the Sikhland Film Festival on November 16th. I hope you all go. Also, the documentary will air on KVIE. We have flyers, and it's going to play all Thanksgiving weekend. But more importantly, I want to inspire many people here. Pick up a camera, pick up your phone, your computer, your pen. Share your own truth, your own story, and transform the way we see the world. And I hope the vendor ends up doing a film about folk music among Punjabi women. I hope Raji Tumber ends up making a film or writing a book about the community, because she knows a tremendous amount about the community. And Sharon Singh, I want to give my greatest respect to as well, because her family, the Purdiwals, have contributed so much to this community, and she has given so selflessly to this project. All three of them have, and we should honor them. And we should honor all of the women in the project. And I hope many of you, this inspires you to tell your stories. Well done,